This episode of Nuff Said is brought to you by Tweaked Audio. To get awesome headphones, go to tweakedaudio.com and use the coupon code Southgate to get 30% off, free shipping, and a lifetime warranty. Or you can get there through the link on our website, southgatemediagroup.com.
In a world of heroes and monsters, one group of special individuals stand as our shield against the dangers that lurk in the night. They are the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Nuff said. Welcome once again to Nuff Said, the Southgate Media Capes and Lunatics Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. podcast. I'm your host, Charlie the Professor Esser, and with me, as always, is my skinny rich friend.
It's Mozz.
Hey, Mozz, so glad to have you here.
I know.
As we race towards the end of season 6. Almost to season 7, though. So
Right, the beginning of the eventual final end.
Yes, for the story, if not the universe. Remember, all these characters, they can come back. And, you know...
Well, I mean, that's to be debated now that they're saying they're recasting Daredevil, so...
Who said that?
Well, it was announced a little while ago. They're rebooting the whole Daredevil thing, so I guess Mahershala Ali getting cast as Blade was a harbinger of things to come.
Okay.
That whole universe is sort of officially put to rest, unfortunately.
Let me say this, Mozz. Let me say this. Did Feige say it?
I don't know.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. There's always these rumors, Mozz. You can't trust the rumors.
All right, we'll see.
You gotta trust only the word of Feige. He is the Pope of the MCU. If he says it, then that is consecrated continuity. Okay? That is stuff that you know that is what they're doing. If he doesn't say it, if anyone else says it, it's like, you might as well be Martin Luther. Pounding up a 99 pieces. You're still going to hell. That's the Oh, take that, Martin Luther. No. Martin Luther did not go to hell. That's actually there's a whole set of Catholic dogma that explains why, even though he was a heretic and the church persecuted him as such, those guys actually got into heaven. It's all good. We're cool now.
All right. Yeah, I mean, like the whole time we thought he was in hell. Was he or wasn't he? And if he wasn't, we posthumously just changed our minds. What does that say for the realism we're trying to put forth? I don't know.
It's probably at least as real as the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
At least.
So there you go. Okay, tonight's episode, season 6, episode 11. From the ashes. Out of answers and running out of time, the agents must face the ghosts of their past to move forward. Jennifer Fang, that's Phang, almost a supervillain, but not quite. Jennifer Fang is our director this week. Of course, we get our Stan Lee and Jack Kirby Marvel Comics by credits. Of course, our created bys, we get Joss Whedon, Jed Whedon, and Marisa Kankarian. James C. Oliver and Charla Oliver are sharing the written bys this week. And they're also dueling it up as the executive story editors, both of them at the same time, all just so they can lord it over. Hardest working man in show business, our regular old story editor, George Kitson. Yay,
yeah, sounds like a fun time.
Oh, it is. So, oh man, what an episode! Can we just say that? Can we just open up with that?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see the end coming. I thought they were committed to one sort of narrative thread, and then they said, "Oh no, but wait, there's more. There's always been more."
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing, and that it really raises this high question for me. Are the ghosts really the people? And this raises a real question about Sarge. Because Sarge is the ghost. He's the ghost that Coulson faced. The ghost who told Coulson, "You're dying on the operating table. None of this is real." and Coulson rejected that, and as we now know, that Sarge got pulled into space and time, but then also carried with it everything that Coulson was with him. So, and it raises,
Right. So who are we? What are we really? If just, the resonance of our experience can be birthed into a piece of ourselves, and is that us? And is a piece of us still us? Who are we?
well, and this is also interestingly slightly different because it's not necessarily Coulson, because it's not Coulson's memories. It's not Coulson's histories. He has like some shadows of Coulson's memories. But what it is Coulson's essence. Coulson the leader, Coulson the hero, Coulson with the team he has assembled of this ragtag crew to be the last line of defense, the shield for the earth, or in this case, the shield for many earths. Um, and it's interesting, and it goes to your classic clone dilemma. When if I am cloned, and all of my mind I put into that clone, and that clone comes to life as I die, have I died? Do I continue as that clone? If my clone can even remember my death, is it anything other than myself? Or is it something else entirely? Yeah.
Right. Or is our essence simply the reflections of us in other people? Because if everybody else there wasn't there to recognize Sarge, would it still be Sarge, or would it just be a person experiencing a schizophrenic break?
Well, but at the same time, it goes to your classic Superman conundrum, which is, even evil Supermen usually are still Supermen. In their own way of approaching the universe, they still have, they may be evil, but they become very lawful evil. And, this is why, they become dictators, but they also have, they're not bound by petty hubris as a dictator. They're not bound by insults because they know they can destroy anyone and anything. Their dictatorship is for your good. When you see Superman Red Sun or read that book or see the movie, because now it's a movie, although I haven't seen the movie yet. It's one of the great DC animated films. And the idea is that, yes, Superman was raised, in Russia by Stalin, although technically he's from the Ukraine, just shout out to all my Ukrainians out there, you know, um, he's raised in the Ukraine, which of course is like the Kansas of Russia idea. Um, well, it was a breadbasket. It was rural, and it was, a place where a lot of very good-hearted people lived, and so young Kal-El was raised there. And although he embraces the communist dictatorship of Stalinism, at the same time, he also eventually becomes the leader of it and dedicates himself to the glorious workers' paradise. And, basically, even though it is still filled with corruption and falling apart, having an omnipotent Superman as your benefactor pretty much keeps the wheels on the cart. So it's an interesting tale. And again, even though he is the bad guy in it, even though he is arguably, and Lex Luthor is president, and there's this whole thing where Lex Luthor, of course, seems like the good guy because he is fighting against, the Russians, but at the same time, it's still that same dynamic of Lex Luthor versus Superman, and he is still at his core that good man Superman. And in this, even though this is a Coulson, arguably born of heck, born of a fear dimension or a place where there is not physical form and everything is nightmares. Although, as as Azelle says, we aren't nightmares. It's just that that's all you people have. All you people create are the things you fear. You can't create anything but your own fear, and that I think actually speaks brilliantly to what we also see when we're looking at both Benson and then later Yo-Yo and Mac, where they all are like, I don't have anything left to fear. Nothing you can do can scare us. But of course, what she does is she brings Benson's lover back to tell him all of the things that are just in his heart. Okay. You know, um, it's not, and that's the thing is like, was that truth or was that just what was in his heart? And his fear was that, yes, his lover was aware, could hear everything, was awake and smelled the liquor on his breath as he said goodbye.
Right. I think the implication there that his lover died because Benson was drunk driving, and that's what killed his lover.
No, I got the implication that what killed his lover was that he had to pull the plug.
Right, but I got this, and maybe because I guess I don't know the history of the show as well, or maybe this is a new character, so there isn't much to know. But yeah. I got the sense that it was also implying that the liquor he smelled on his breath in the hospital was due to the fact that he was drunk when the accident happened, and that he was driving drunk. So, and I feel like whether or not it is the truth or not, I mean, what is truth except left to the people that are there to feel it? And as far as he knew, it was the truth.
Yeah, and
it sort of mirrors what we're experiencing with Coulson and Quake at the end there. Whether or not it is true, but if it's true to her, it is true because that's the only truth we can know.
Well, that scene itself has a whole other complex aspect, which is because at that point she feels that there is no Coulson. This is at best she
right.
But when he tells her to do this, and tells her that she is more powerful than than she ever knew, that's a scene that they had earlier. And
so it was actually calling back to something that happened to sort of prove. But then again, I guess she can't read Quake's memories, so it had to be a real memory in there. So that's interesting.
Well, it's that these are words that Coulson would say. It's sort of like if you had a computer program that was based on you, and it was an AI. So you have an AI, you have your really high quality AI that talks like you and thinks like you and behaves like you. Does that stop being you? Is that you? If they record your brain and then you live on as a computer program, is that a shadow of you, or is that as much you as you ever were?
And it forces us to ask the question, what is the idea of the self? And do we truly understand it fully yet, or not?
Yeah, well, I'm going to go with or not.
Yeah, that's it's beginning to be more and more apparent that perhaps we don't very well at all.
Well, I mean, that is, that the thing is that as all knowledge is the more you gain, the more you realize you do not know.
Right.
You can have the world, you can be happy as the king of the universe inside of a nutshell to probably mangle and misunderstand what Shakespeare was trying to say in Hamlet. But the fact of the matter is that as you gain knowledge, all the things you thought were so set in stone fade away. The brain is a giant, computer, and well, no, actually, you can have massive parts of it destroyed, and yet other things you will still have memories that you can't tie back to the brain, even though we know that's supposed to be what the brain does. And it's like, if the brain isn't the part that's doing it, and yet the body is rerouting the brain so that it can still function without these parts it's supposed to need, what does that actually mean for the brain? Is the as I say, that's sort of the hardest thing about it, and I think that's actually the hardest thing when it comes to creating a really functional AI. We can maybe make a passable AI, but a real AI would have to be an AI that cannot comprehend its own existence. And that's sort of because that's the only thing that puts us in an uncertainty about us being a sentient being.
Right. It's almost like there's all this sort of subtext that would be lost. It's like the brain is so powerful that there's all these areas that maybe are dormant or that are there, because if it can compensate for a piece being damaged, then obviously there must be more to it than what is actively being used. And if that's the case, then there's all this underlying subconscious or subtext that is ethereal but is just as real and can come into fruition at any time that it is needed. And that's what we can't give with AI, because we can only give it the physical capacities that we can see and narrate,
Well, exactly, and that's sort of why it's always hard to make an AI, because because essentially, there's this one of my great one of the great Futurama episodes is it's the one where Bender becomes the werecar. Spoilers. And they go to I forget, but it's like the robot version of Transylvania, and and it's all this scared, superstitious villagers, and they're all robots, of course. And he says, "Oh, all your vaunted science, but can you say how a robot thinks and feels?" And the professor says, "Yes, of course it can. See, it's right here on your circuit diagram." And that's the thing. But the thing is does that explain how a robot thinks or feels, or does that just give an explanation to how to make a robot that thinks and feels?
Or does it explain it or just describe it?
Exactly, exactly. And that is the question we face with Sarge. That is the question that Benson faces, and arguably Benson does get fooled by it, but or convinced by it eventually, because he has to watch his lover die again and again and again, always repeating the things that are the most horrific to him, and yada yada yada. And then
Yeah.
what's interesting at the very end, after they say they've already lost so many,
Hmm.
we've lost everyone. It's like you can't. We've faced death. We've gone beyond seeing all of our friends and people we care about die. Even Mac, of course, had his robot daughter in the framework die. You know, that is how messed up this is how much stuff they've seen. And but then what they bring in is actually a character from the future by the name of Flint, who actually also is in the regular MCU, is an Inhuman with it. He's a he can control rocks essentially, and he can like bring a bunch of rocks to him and it becomes a super exoskeleton, or he can just make rocks levitate and fly at people. And he's a, what do they call it, a geokinetic. You know, yeah, it's like if it's made of dirt, he can make it move. So
That's a broad spectrum.
yeah, because if you think about it, all steel, all metal is just dirt.
Right, right.
You know?
Every single element on the periodic table of elements could be, you can find an argument to say it is dirt.
Exactly. So yeah, it's an interesting question, but that's his power. And like all the best superpowers, they're really, really vague. Not for nothing. That's why you still have the elementals.
Right.
Which of course is the most hilarious aspect of that thing when they're saying, they're the four elemental forces of nature: earth, wind, fire, water, and it's like that's not the elements of the universe. It's like anyone with any science background, was like, oh, okay. But that was the idea in Far From Home. Sorry, spoilers for Far From Home. It was a story so outlandish,
Right.
and people said, "I buy that." I can totally see that. Pardon me. But anyway, but that's the drama of this. That's that's the pathos, and that's great. There is also actually a lot of story that goes on too. You have essentially, and you have this great Fitzsimmons and Deke Trevor, and it's actually really fun. It's really fun, especially because Deke is just totally yes-anding. He's like a kid, and he just wants
Yeah.
to play, and he wants to be a part of it. He wants, he wants.
And he wants to make his grandpa proud.
Yeah, and then at the end, that's exactly what he does. Because he's the one who figures out, oh, resonant frequencies, and he actually shows, I actually do have this brain. Everyone thinks I'm this. Everyone thinks I'm Jockster the Mighty, but I'm actually my own character, and I'm not just a screw up who falls backwards into adventure. I actually am super intelligent and um, can make these things, and actually comes up with this idea that there's a way, because it's based on the resonant frequencies of these things that we know will kill the Shrikes. You can actually make it so that you can make someone immune to being taken over by Izel. One wonders, like, if you put her in that kind of a resonant frequency, if that would trap her, or if it would, disintegrate her. Interesting question. But yeah, I mean, it is, and of course, Daisy takes the magic sword, which is one of those things where you say, where did he get a magic sword anyway? Um, he's got all these little fancy crystals, the piezoelectric gems that he is going to use to kill these Shrikes. But it's interesting that never asks how did he get these, where did these come, but he does have them, so good for that. And that's when they come to that question. It's like, if it can kill me, it can kill her. Do it, and then that's when Daisy breaks down, and she can't do it. And that's beautiful. That is really, really beautiful, because it is about how, as much as you want to deny it's Coulson, there's so much in there that is still whatever Coulson is. Whatever that essence is, it's still there. And, and then one can imagine that's true of any of the reproductions that they create. Now, again, it's interesting to tie this once more back to the Darkhold. Now, the Darkhold isn't per se part of the Monolith story, but they all run right next to each other. They have made several references to Ghost Rider already, again, who again comes from this other dimension that is expressly tied to the Dark. The other dimension of the framework was inspired by the Darkhold. And, fun fact, coming up soon, I believe it's in 2021, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is coming to. And that is a big deal, because the idea that, because I mean, really, in many ways, what we're looking at with Izel is the idea of a universe that was populated by beings without form. But when the doorway to the universe was opened by the monoliths, suddenly they were exposed to form. It's kind of like a twisted version of the Beyonder story, But instead of coming to the universe to learn about this universe, they just decided to take on the forms of the psychic energies coming at them, which are the fears and the pains and the worries of the people. And for what it's worth, the basic magical nature of humanity.
Of our minds, of consciousness itself.
Exactly. So I mean, it is interesting. And
it's also interesting, wasn't it like Socrates used to think that our ideas of the ideal tree or the ideal mountain were only in our minds because there existed beyond this dimension a dimension of perfect forms?
No, that's Plato.
Plato, okay, yeah, sorry. Yeah. So this is sort of like the reverse of that, saying that there's a world without form, and they come here to and they venerate us as being better than them or more idealistic than them.
Well, I don't think they venerate
to them,
us. Yeah.
We are the world of form.
Yeah. Well,
they want to be us because they're not us,
Yeah, they're a world without form. They want form, and they might as well just take ours. There's the idea that they're operating from, I guess. It is interesting in the way that they are presenting this other universe, because again, like we say, these are all things. They are always dancing around whatever is happening. We still don't have that answer to that question about what Daisy saw in the last 5 years. Because it was strongly implied this story takes place 1 year later after the end of the last episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But then the last episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is, Daisy taking off into space, but at what point in that last scene is that happening? And it's interesting because what took place in that 5 years before she last went into space. For example, we don't know if that's the only time she went into space. So there's lots of possibilities of what we're looking at here. I still think there is definitely the possibility that they did a bait and switch on us where they told us it was 1 year later. Then after the film came out, it's actually yes, it was 1 year later, but actually that last scene in last season took 4 years to tell. Well, and you think about it, that's not entirely impossible because you see them sort of reforming Shield and rebuilding stuff and sort of putting everything back together again. And the reality is that's probably not going to take a week. They got to retrofit the ship, they've got to get everything repaired, they got to get everyone cleaned and fed and Barry fits and do this and do that.
Sure enough.
It's entirely possible that all took several years. Just an interesting theory. You think about this. Did Deke build all of that tech empire in 1 year?
Yeah, I guess the way to explain the quickness of it is that he stole all the stuff, so he didn't really have to build anything, just, slowly release it, or not that slowly release it.
Well, you have to get venture capital. You have to, you have to hire the staff. You have to get an HR department. There's a lot that goes into that. You have to, and for everything else, you have to have a proof of concept to show to your venture capitalists. You've got a lot of work you have to do. I mean, just getting a meeting with a venture capitalist probably is going to take at least a year. Then you've got to get the space. You've got to build that space out. You've got to establish your crew. And not for nothing, it's not like these were all new hires. These were all people that clearly were all into Deke's story. So I think there's a strong argument to be made that there was a lot of time passing in that last episode before we get that 1 year jump. They just don't mention the snap because, spoilers. These people all survived, and now they're also mourning the loss of their dear friend who maybe survived the snap but is still going to die, and so maybe you don't even want to mention about how many people got snapped. There's all sorts of possibilities here. And then there's also the possibility that they're all still in the framework. They never escaped. Bum, bum,
oh, gee, let's not let that be the case. Please don't let that be the case.
I think that is highly unlikely. I do think we are going to get Ghost Rider back soon, though, and that's worth the interest. Anything else you want to talk about this episode? Anything else that jumped out to you that made you go, wow, this was a great episode? I'm so glad we're watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I can't wait till we get to the final episode, and then I can't wait till we get to the next season, and I'm just going to be sad when it's over.
No, I think we got to it. I think the most interesting scene to me was Sarge finally making it, or Coulson, or shades of Coulson making an appearance. And what it meant to Quake, and then her and Yo-Yo's conversation at the end. But I think what's got me more excited about the next season is that they now know that it is going to be the last season, so they're just gonna, take the training wheels off and just go full bore, and that's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, not for nothing. That's what they did the season prior to this one, where they really just said, let's go it all out. And then they said, okay, we're going to give you one more season. They said, well, one more and one more. It is, because for what it's worth, obviously, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., for all the flack they get, there is clearly a lot of love somewhere in Disney for this property. So they have lived far longer than any other superhero TV show. Maybe Arrow's been on longer. I'm not sure, but even Arrow's about to end.
Right. Oh, it's really interesting what they're doing there. It's really fascinating what they're doing there. The convergence of all the different universes.
Oh yeah. They're doing their Crisis on Infinite Earths. Yes.
Oh right. That's going to be interesting. And I don't even watch the show, but I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah. Well, make sure you're listening to on Capes and Lunatics, Lilith Hellfire talking about, I think it's Lilith Hellfire and Phil Parrish talking about the Arrowverse on their Arrowverse podcasts. Oh yeah, and guess what? Way Before the Bat is back on Southgate Media, in which myself and Phil and Tyler Patrick will be watching at least the first 3 episodes of Pennyworth, which, oh my gosh, that is a good series.
Really?
Oh, yeah. On Amazon Prime, you get at least the first 3 episodes for free. And that is just insane. It is.
What network is it on normally?
It's normally on Epix. So if you have Epix, you got that already. You can get Epix. I think it's like $5 a month or something. You know, the normal price. Um, but it is such a good show. I mean, it is just crazy. It's like it is so believably a show that takes place as the prequel to Gotham. I mean, officially it's not Gotham, but you watch it and you say, this if this was the universe in which Gotham existed in, everything about Gotham makes so much more sense. And then you play into that third idea, which is that the 66 Batman is actually set in the Gotham of Batman. It all makes even more sense. Like the way law works and crime works and everything just is it is it is something Charlie Esser would like, as Lilith Hellfire would say. So yeah, definitely go check out Way Before the Bat over on Capes and Lunatics. Or it might be called Before the Bat. I don't know. I don't know what Phil's calling it. He may just be calling it another Capes and Lunatics spinoff. I think the first episode dropped, so you'll have to listen to what it is.
Interesting.
Scroll down. Okay, except this is our audio podcast. So we should work on that. Anyway, Mozz, I think that's everything. How can people reach out to you? And then some. How can people reach out to you and talk to you about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Jessica Jones, whether or not they're going to be recasting Daredevil or not? Don't recast Daredevil.
I mean, I wish they wouldn't, but at the same time, I'm excited to see what other direction they take it. And that was good. And maybe it's okay to let it be contained in this trilogy of seasons, and that's perfectly fine and a gem on itself without letting it get ruined or overbloated with yada yada yada. So maybe that's cool too. I'm not mad at either direction, to be honest with you. But
I want the non-hero Kingpin.
You know what? Yeah, that one's gonna hurt.
Although they brought back J.K. Simmons as
Hey, that is a good
so maybe some people get to come back.
Hey, I'm not mad at that. If they do that, then I'd rather them save Kingpin than save Daredevil.
Fair enough,
yeah. But if someone wants to debate this further, they can email me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com or find me on Facebook under Mozz Manzor. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
And of course, you can always write to me in that old-fashioned email way, the way our Mozz and Pause once did, at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, @gmail.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter as I live tweet Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. if I'm not recording stuff at 8 o'clock on Fridays, which recently I have been, or something else like Cloak and Dagger when it comes back, which is on Thursdays. I don't do nothing on Thursdays. At Charlie Esser, but CHARLIEESSCR. Look for the only 2 E's in the middle for equality, Tristan. Thank you for the ping. He said 3 E's. I heard 3.
I heard 2, so maybe that's just because my brain was trained to hear 3, so I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe
2.
I got the headphones on, so, but yes. There are actually 4 E's. Actually, there actually are 3 E's. CHARLIEESSER. Yeah, so there are 3 E's.
But not in the middle.
Only 2 are in the middle. That's our trademark.
Right.
The famous double E of Charlie Esser. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are safe once again from the forces. Well, not really, because Azel's still out there. The forces of the universe that are plotting against all humanity. And when the time comes, the agents will stand, protect us, and say, finally, when it's all over, enough said.
Enough said.